the road presented by Best Western. You guys already know where we are. We're in Storrs, Connecticut, where it is absolutely lit. The fans have come out in a major way this morning, and I'm here with Jay Bilas. Jay, you were here the very first game day here in Storrs, Connecticut. Now, I want to ask you exactly what you remember, but I do want to point out that Jay did have hair during that time. So when you see that clip, it looks a little different, just slightly different. Yeah.
It took a lot longer to get ready in the morning. But what I remember from 20 years ago was, one, UConn was one of the premier, if not the premier programs in the country. And there was a horrible snowstorm that Saturday. So outside it was awful, and inside it was awesome. It was a fantastic setting to start game day, and it's a fantastic setting to be back 20 years later.
Right, for sure. Obviously, UConn, you mentioned that they are a premier program then. They're a premier program now as well, trying to get another national championship. What has impressed you the most about this UConn team this season?
Well, they have everything. All their pieces fit together. They're every bit as good, I think, as last year's national championship team. And they lost so much from last year, you wouldn't expect that to be the case. And in fact, I think this year's team, relative to the field, is probably a little bit ahead of where last year's team was. You know, if you remember, last year's UConn team that won the national championship, the first month and a half of the season, I think all of us thought they're the best team. And then UConn lost 6 of 8 to start their Big East season.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, they wound up losing to Marquette in the Big East semifinals. But in the tournament, they were by far the best team. And it's not how you do in January that matters, it's how you do in March. And this team is trending to do equally as well in March. Our system is not set up for the best team to win every time, to win the championship. It's probably the worst way you can select a champion. But if you were putting money on a team now, you'd take UConn.
Okay, so I do want to mention one thing, because they obviously did just have a loss on the road against Creighton. That's 21 straight away losses against ranked teams. So what does UConn need to do to bounce back tonight against Nova? I
think it'll all start on the defensive end for UConn, how they guard the actions that Villanova has. But UConn is such a beautiful offensive team. They didn't play as well at Creighton, but all the things they run, the cutting, the movement, all their cuts are to the ball and to the basket. They're double cuts, exit cuts. It's just multiple actions. So sooner or later, the defense makes a mistake, and UConn takes advantage of it. But their depth and the way they play together, they don't take a hit when they go to the bench.
Yeah.
And at times they're elevated. It's just it's a fantastic basketball team that I think has a chance to get better as we get to the end of the year. Now, other teams can do that too.
Right.
And just because you're on that trajectory doesn't guarantee anything. But I think staying healthy and with a fresh mind and fresh legs as they get to the end of the season, I can't imagine you'd want to be anybody other than UConn.
We had a very interesting conversation yesterday in our production meeting, just talking about whether or not this team can go back-to-back. You talked about it a little bit, but what do they have to do in order to get another championship this season?
You know, I think a lot of it has to do, it sounds silly, but stay together. The loss to Creighton, you know, people like us are saying, well, what's wrong?
Right.
Lose a game. That's all in the rearview mirror. You know, they're. I think UConn and Danny Hurley does a really good job of they assess what happened and they look at it and say, here's how we can get better, and then they flush it and move on.
Yeah.
Because the championship's ahead of them.
Right.
Whatever happened, you know, last week, last month, doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
They've already assessed it and they move on. Because every goal that they have is still in front of them.
Yeah, for sure. You see it in the Raptors there. They're hoping that says 2024 national championships at the end of this season. It's great here to be in Storrs, right?
It's always great to be in Storrs, as long as you have ice cream.
We'll talk about that later. That was On the Road, presented by Best Western.